Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. And welcome to the 2025-2026 Winter Wear Board Workshop, where we are working on all things clay. In this video, we are going to be working on these pinch pot bells. I am so happy with the way these came out. Listen to that. These are going to be super easy, super fun to make, so come on, let's do this. To begin making my pinch pot bells, I'm going to cut out some cubes, and to do that, I'm going to divide the top of this into some sections. We're going to divide this into 9 because I don't need very big pieces, and I'm going to use my wire tools, pressing into the clay, go down about 1.5 inches, come straight up, and I'm dividing the first part into 3 sections, down 1.5 inches, come straight up. Then I'm going to do the same, another 2 sections. So I have a grid that looks like a tic-tac-toe board, and I've got about 1.5 inches down of each time I buried that wire tool. I'm going to place the wire cutters right at that line of where I cut down to, and I'm going to place it in front and then pull the wire tool towards me. And what this did is it gave me some cubes to work with. Alright, so I'm going to take one of my cubes, set this bag aside for a moment, and holding my cube, I'm going to begin to form what is called a pinch pot, using the palm of my hand, holding the cube towards myself, looking at the 4 corners. So I'm going to take the palm of my hand, and I am going to knock away the 4 corners. I'm just going to keep going around. As I knock away the 4 corners, I'm using my palm to compress the clay down, really pack the clay down. I don't want to do any funky rolling. I'm packing the clay down and using force to press onto the clay. This is going to eliminate any air bubbles that may form while I'm messing with the clay. If I make too many folds, those folds will turn into air pockets, and air pockets turn into bombs in the kiln and can blow things up. So I have a wheel looking thing now. Now I'm going to go from turning it this way into turning it towards me where the flat is here, and I'm going to work on using that palm to smack away again all of those edges. Then I'm going to flip it over and smack away those edges again. Then I'm just going to look for some sharp points, and any sharp point I have, I'm using my palm to press this into a ball. This is the safest method of pressing it into a ball without getting air pockets. So I'm looking for all those wrinkles and trying to hit away those wrinkles and get myself a ball. Once I have myself a ball, I'm going to take my thumb, stick it into the center of that ball. I'm not going to push all the way through because this is going to be a dome bell shape and I need to have a top part. So I'm going to be about 1/2 inch from the edge. So almost all the way through, 3/4 of the way through, I poked that hole. Then I'm going to take my thumb, stick it back in the hole, take my index finger and my middle finger, and I'm going to use it as a guide to pinch. So I'm pinching along, pinching along, pinching along, and I'm opening up my ball. I'm going to use my fingers to continue to form a dome shape. This dome shape is going to be my bell. Now I want to make sure I pay attention to the thickness. I want to try and get an even thickness so the bottom is fairly even as well as the sides. And I can use my hand to quickly form that shape. You don't have to worry about it being too perfect right now. You want to get to that shape fairly quickly. And you want to make sure that no sides of yours is any thicker than the handle of your fettling knife. So here's my fettling knife. I want to make sure I have no area of this dome shape, little bowl at the moment, is any thicker than the handle of this fettling knife. I'm okay there. Then I'm going to take this, flip it upside down, and set it aside on a piece of board that has some newspaper. Now I'm going to be making 4 of these, and I'm going to set this aside. So I'm going to continue on making my other 3 while I let this one stiffen up a bit, just offset to the side of the table. This bee mix that I'm using is a very soft clay body. I like to work with this clay body when it is leather hard consistency. A leather hard is just what it sounds like. If you imagine a piece of leather that is flexible, you can bend it, but it's stiff enough to hold its form. So I am going to be allowing this clay to sort of set up a bit. This can be done a couple ways. You could set this aside for about an hour. As long as they're not in the direct sun, you can set them aside in a regular temperature room, unwrapped, and they should harden up a little bit to that leather hard stage. If you have sunlight available and you have access to the sun, you can set these out in the sun for about 15 to 20 minutes. Or the other thing you can do is you can wrap them in some plastic, set them aside overnight, and let them get to the leather hard stage. Now, before I do that, I'm going to give them one quick look over, and I really want a dome, a bell dome shape. Now, I'm not worried about my finger marks because I'm going to be carving away these to get them smoother, which was the whole point of why I want to let them set up a bit. But I can use this time to go ahead and form the shapes of my bells any which way I'd like. You could make elongated bells. Let's have a long one, right? Maybe I want to make an interesting looking shaped one. You always want to make a couple extra for what you need. Extra are always good. If you only need 1 or 2 of something, I always double however many I need, just in case, because when I go to do the carving of this, if I accidentally take away too much, I want to make sure that, you know, I still have the amount I wanted. I think I'll have 2 traditional shaped bells, and we have these 2 funky looking shaped ones. Might make a couple more. So I'm going to set these aside in the sun for about 15 minutes. I'll set a timer and I'll check on them. And I'm waiting to where they're not super soft. I need a little bit of a stiffness to them. When I push on them, they don't squish like this. I should be able to still get a fingernail indent on them, but when I push, they don't squish. So while waiting for the pinch pots to set up in the sun, I'm going to make some of my clappers. Now the clappers are going to be the thing that make the bell ding. And these can be any sort of interesting shape that you want, but you do want to keep in mind your rule of nothing thicker than the handle of this fettling knife. So I'm going to use my hands to form these little shaped things. Maybe I'll do a teardrop shape. Again, I'm keeping an eye on the thickness of this thing. I don't want it too thick. Y'all, I apologize ahead of time for all of the crazy background noise. There are literally 4 houses around me getting landscape, roofing, and random construction work done. Quite a bit of noise happening. I'm going to continue to form my clappers. These I want to spend a little time smoothing. You can use my fettling knife. Fingers also work really well to smooth if you don't have tools. But I like using my fettling knife. I will be able to do a bit of carving on these as well. And then I am going to cut a hole here so I have somewhere to string this through. And you can use the tip of your fettling knife, or needle tools are great for this. I think as I string this, I won't need that top. Even with these, you want to make some extra because you never know what's going to happen between the making process to the firing process. Things tend to happen. If you want, you can carve a little design on here because that's going to be visible. Could use a press stamp or something. Seems like a fairly large one, and maybe I'm going to make some smaller ones. Just going to roll a little one, and since this is a small, no bigger than the handle of my fettling knife, that's a very simple way of getting a clapper. The clay is going to shrink. I want to make sure that the hole's still big enough to get my string through. So I'm going to go ahead and pinch this a little bit so that I don't have big meat going through. Each size plus shape of the bell is going to give you a different sound. So it's all going to depend on how much clay and how much weight you have on the clapper and the shape of the clapper, as well as the shape of the bell. You have some texture mats. I'm going to press my clappers into these and get a little bit of texture going. You don't have to do this. I just thought make it a little interesting. Could use a roller. Pick up that texture nicer. You have to be careful that you don't get rid of the texture on the other side. Sometimes that happens. So here, let's see. These are small enough that I could Maybe fold this over. And voila, I got texture on both sides. That worked out well. My pinch pots have had time to set up. I can still get a fingernail through them, but if I push on them, they're not squishy anymore. So this is a good place for them to be. And I want to pay attention to how thick my walls are, but I'm going to be using my loop tool to come in and carve away those finger marks, and then also giving myself a nicer shape. You want to pay attention and make sure that you're not taking away too much. If you don't have a larger loop tool, you can use a smaller loop tool. And I can do that for the inside as well. And just spend some time reshaping my piece to get it to a more refined form. And also in doing this, I'm thinning out my pinch pot so that I end up with nicer sound. You want to be careful that you don't remove too much, because you could end up plowing a hole or cracking your piece. And that's why I said it's always a good idea to make a couple extra, because you never know. Before I go any further, I'm going to put a hole in the top of this so that I have some way to hang my bell and to also attach my clapper. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a needle tool to do this. You can open it up. You know, if you've got a hole cutter handy, go ahead and use a hole cutter to pop in there. You could also use a small drill bit if you got a drill bit. Try to get that hole in there. Do that on both sides. I am going to be doing some applique where I'm going to be making some little designs and applying them onto my piece. Taking down my sidewalls is also going to help me control thickness, so when I add my decorations onto this, it's not going to be overly thick. I have lots of little molds that I like to collect. You don't have to use a mold. You could just hand form little shapes, whatever kind of shapes you want to hand form, and slip and score and attach them. But since I have molds, I'm going to go ahead and use them for this. I like this little shape. I think I'm going to use that for the top of my bell. So I'm going to press, just rolled a little ball of clay, pressing. Whoopsie. These are super dry. I have not used these in a long time. These are made out of clay. I had a bunch of antique hardware, pressed them into some clay, fired up that clay, and made myself a little bisque mold. Look at that. That looks really great. So I'm going to use, I got an X-Acto knife somewhere. I use my X-Acto knife to cut away. They're called sprig molds. When we use them for clay and we're doing small pressings and then applying those pressings to our objects, we usually refer to those types of molds as a sprig mold. You certainly could use a pre-made candy mold as a sprig mold. There's no reason why you couldn't. I'm going to use the center point of this as an opportunity to also create that top point for my bell. And now to attach, I am going to score. Scoring is where I take my serrated rib and I'm scraping into the piece, and I'm going to scrape the piece that I'm attaching as well. And then I'm going to add some slip. This is liquid clay. Pop that on. I'm going to press that into place. Make sure my hole is all right. And then I'm going to follow this up. I think I'll use the tip of my X-Acto knife, or you could use your fettling knife to come in and blend. And I'm going to pull little bits of that clay from my design down and blend it into my bell. This is a very important part. You can't just smack this on there and expect that the slip is going to hold it all in place. It's not magic glue. It's only an assist. It'll only help you make that connection. It's not going to glue it on for you. So you need to come in and really blend your attachment piece on. You don't have to have a mold. You can hand form whatever shape you want and then go ahead and cut out some shapes. There you go, you got a star shape, and then you can slip and score and attach that on if you want to. I'm going to continue with my texture. I like to just roll little balls and then press them in, and that gives me a nice little shape, and I'll go ahead and score and slip and attach that on. Have a lot of fun attaching different shapes and doing different designs on your pieces. Always don't forget, sometimes I like to just blend and leave the texture of my blending and make that part of the piece. So I added some sweater looking texture to this one, which I really like. This one had a little bit of that star sort of festive kind of feel going on. I enjoyed the shape of this one, so after I cleaned it up, I kind of left it alone. I think I'm going to leave that one as is. And then this one, I just did a bit of carving using my loop tool. I'm going to do some tree shapes. I'm just gonna roll, cut some triangles. I'm just gonna be slipping and scoring to attach these to my pinch pots. I'm gonna use the tip of my square loop to carve the trunk. And I can come in with my needle tool. And cute little trees. So an easy way to make sure that you have nice clean edges is just to take your piece and give it a tap on the surface. And any bits of overage you can come in and just clean up. For this one, I want to roll a bit of coil and give my edge some interest. So I'm just squishing my clay to thin it out. And then I'm going to use the palm of my hands to lightly press and smooth out. And now I'm going to still do my scoring. I think I want a clean edge, so I'm going to chop that there, press it on a bit, but then I'm always going to follow that up with a blend. So I'm going to use my fettling knife to really blend that on there. And then I can come to the other side, give myself some blending there. Kind of like the texture of that blend. We're going to leave that there. And then I'm just going to take some of this leftover, roll some little balls, a little bit thicker than I want it to be. We'll take a half of one. So since I just added a bunch of stuff to these, I'm going to leave them wrapped up overnight before I send them off to the kiln, because I want to make sure the bits that I added on really have time to dry and get stuck into place. So here are my bells that I have made and my clappers that go along with them. Covering them in the plastic really helps create a little mini micro environment where the moisture content of the clay equals itself out and they really get a chance to get stuck on there. My pinch pots have been glazed, and for my clappers I did not put any top coat. I just fired them directly up to a cone 5 with a little bit of underglaze color just to give it a little bit of a personality. I went ahead and matched up the ones that I'm going to be attaching together, and I think those two are going to get silver string, and then the rest of these can get holiday colored string. I'm just going to be stringing everything together, so I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece of this and see where it gets me. I'm going to go in here, loop around this guy. I went ahead and double knotted that from there, and this is a good height, and that is a nice sound. Woo, I love that. All right, I'm gonna knot this right here to get it close. Double knotting these guys, double knotting these guys. It would be good if I had some beads. I might have some wooden beads laying around. I should look for them. Yay! Can be hung. I'm gonna go ahead and tie up all these others. All right, y'all, my bells are finished. I got them hanging up here. I just hung the more Christmas colored ones, and down here I have my other two makes. Not a bad sound. That's some brilliant sound coming out of them. I like how varying the clapper and varying the shape will give you such dramatically different sounds, even though the process was pretty much similar and the size of the clappers were all fairly the same. But the sound. So many different sounds. So much fun to play with. All right, I hope you enjoyed making these pinch pots with me. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already, and stick around for more wearboard fun.